annual TechCorp holiday gala glittered with the forced cheer of 1,000 unspoken corporate anxieties. Sub-zero temperatures outside in Chicago had driven the party indoors to the gilded ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel. But the atmosphere was thick with a different kind of coldness, a creeping unease that settled in the chest of David Sterling. He stood near the open bar, a glass of lukewarm bourbon in his hand, watching his wife Evelyn. Evelyn Sterling, with her meticulously styled blonde hair and a smile that could charm City Hall, was the rising star of TechCorp's sales division. She was also, David knew with a certainty that felt like a tumor in his gut, having an affair. It had started subtly 6 months ago, late nights that bled into early mornings, a new expensive silk scarf, the sudden, aggressive privacy around her phone. Now, under the oppressive weight of crystal chandeliers, the subtle signs had given way to blatant disregard. She was dancing with Marcus Thorne, the CEO, a man who built an empire on ruthless acquisitions and a predatory charm. Marcus, 45 and perpetually tanned from weekend trips to Miami, wore his power like a second skin. He was a shark in a tailored Italian suit. On the dance floor, they were too close. The slow, romantic swing of the music was merely a pretext for a choreography of intimacy. Marcus's left hand rested low on Evelyn's back, his fingers occasionally dipping below the hem of her shimmering emerald dress. Evelyn, usually so guarded, was tilted back slightly, her head thrown back in a laugh that sounded too loud, too genuine for a professional setting. David watched the play of light on her throat, a small, pale target that made him want to lash out and protect it, or perhaps crush it. Their eyes met for a fleeting second across the crowded floor. Evelyn's smile faltered, replaced by a quick, nervous twitch, a flicker of guilt that she instantly extinguished by tightening her grip on Marcus's shoulder and burying her face against his neck for a moment that lasted an eternity. Just a little too long, Eve, David thought, the ice in his glass melting into an unwelcome reminder of the coldness now inhabiting his home. He had gathered scraps of evidence over the last month, a digital archaeologist digging through the ruins of his marriage. The G on the dry cleaning tag wasn't a mistake. It was the start of Thorne. The faint scent of a high-end woody cologne that wasn't his had lingered in their bedroom too often. The final damning piece of evidence had arrived just 2 hours before the party, an anonymous email with a grainy photo attached. It was Evelyn and Marcus, caught in a hasty, illicit embrace in a secluded corner of the office parking garage. It wasn't just a boss-employee interaction. It was betrayal, stark and undeniable. David drained his glass. He wouldn't cause a scene tonight. Scenes were for movies and desperate people. David Sterling, a structural engineer with a meticulous mind, did not do desperation. He did strategy. He would collect more data. He would build his case, piece by methodical piece, until the structure of her life, their life, was ready to collapse on her terms, not his. Later, the music shifted to an upbeat pop track, and Evelyn finally broke away, heading toward the restrooms. David tracked her movement. Marcus watched her go, a possessive, smug look plastered across his face that made David's fingers clench around his empty glass. He saw Marcus pull out his phone, text someone, and then follow the path Evelyn had taken moments before. David moved from the bar, circling the perimeter of the ballroom and cutting through a side hallway near the kitchen. He knew the layout of the peninsula, having attended years of these wretched parties. He stopped just short of the private, unmonitored VIP lounge that TechCorp always reserved for after-hours meetings. The door was slightly ajar. He didn't need to go inside. The silence in the hallway, save for the muffled party noise, was broken by a sound that ripped through David's remaining denial like a knife, the wet, undeniable sound of a secret kiss. He heard Evelyn's breathless murmur, "We shouldn't. Someone might see," followed by Marcus's low, confident reply, "Let them. They know whose you are now." David didn't wait to hear more. He retreated, his heart pounding a furious rhythm against his ribs. The sound of that kiss, the casual arrogance of Marcus's voice, the complicity in Evelyn's breath, it solidified everything. This was not a fling. It was an established pattern of contempt. He found a secluded corner and sent a single coded text to his most trusted college friend, a corporate lawyer named Ben who owed him several favors. "Initiate the prenup file review. Full separation. I have cause. Call me at 6 a.m. When Evelyn finally emerged, her lipstick was slightly smudged, her emerald dress rustled as she moved. She approached him with a practiced, weary smile. Honey, I'm exhausted. Marcus just told me I need to fly to Tokyo next week for the quarter review. Total whirlwind. Can we call an Uber? David looked at her, truly looked at the woman he had promised forever to. Her eyes held the triumphant, hard sparkle of someone who believed she had won a major victory, a sale closed, a promotion secured. She saw him as a compliant prop in her ascent. Of course, Eve, he said, his voice level, almost unnervingly calm. Let's go home. You'll need your rest for the big trip. He took her arm, his touch professional, distant. She didn't notice the difference. She was already mentally calculating her jet lag and her next secret meeting. The drive back to their luxury condo overlooking Lake Michigan was silent. David stared out at the city lights, each window a tiny, self-contained world, none of them containing the wreckage of his own. He was no longer a victim. He was an executor. The story she thought she was writing for her life was about to be profoundly, violently edited. He was starting to feel a cold, clear exhilaration that was infinitely more potent than the whiskey he'd drunk. The game was on. He knew her greatest weakness wasn't her infidelity. It was her ambition. Everything in her life, their shared assets, their future, was geared toward her professional success and the appearance of a perfect, enviable life. He would use that against her. He would dismantle the perfect structure she had built, and he would do it so carefully, so professionally, that she wouldn't even realize the foundation was gone until the walls came down around her. She wanted to play corporate games. He would show her what a meticulous engineer could do with a strategic demolition plan. He unlocked the condo door, letting her stride ahead. Evelyn immediately headed for her phone, undoubtedly to text Marcus, her partner in crime. David went straight to his study, not to sleep, but to begin the real work. He needed to review every financial document, every shared account, every legal clause. She had misjudged him, confusing his quiet nature for weakness. She would soon learn that a quiet man who watched everything was the most dangerous kind of man to betray. The sleepless night ahead felt like the first sip of a long, calculated revenge. David didn't sleep that night, not for a moment. By 5:50 a.m., he had a meticulously organized spreadsheet open on his triple monitor setup, a visual representation of 8 years of shared finances. Evelyn had been cavalier with their joint account, but David, the engineer who budgeted his life with the precision he applied to structural stress tests, had kept his separate professional accounts for his consulting firm rock solid and largely invisible to her. Her salary, large as it was, flowed into the joint accounts, but his income, often larger due to lucrative, high-security government contracts, was expertly funneled. She saw stability. He saw a fortress. At 6 a.m. sharp, Ben, his lawyer friend, called. David didn't mince words. He relayed the evidence, the email photo, the dry cleaning tag, the whispered hallway moment. Ben listened, his legal mind quickly calculating the cost-benefit analysis. David, we have cause. Strong cause. The hotel receipts from her business trips you mentioned. Let's get a private investigator to match them with Thorne's schedule. We can move fast, file immediately, hit her with a surprise injunction. No, David interrupted, his voice calm but absolute. We do not move fast. That's what she expects. I want her to climb the ladder a little higher first. I want her to feel secure and vulnerable. I want this divorce to be her career funeral, not just a personal inconvenience. TechCorp has a zero-tolerance policy for executive-level sexual harassment and affairs that compromise corporate integrity, especially involving the CEO. Ben paused, a slow, appreciative whistle escaping his lips. You want to turn this into a corporate hostile takeover of her life. You're thinking of the moral turpitude clause in her employment contract. Exactly. The moral turpitude clause has teeth, Ben. She and Thorne have been compromising company resources and violating policy. I need definitive proof of their relationship occurring on company time or using company funds. Not just a photo, but a paper trail. I want to time the filing perfectly. The day she lands back from Tokyo, or better, the day she gets the big promotion she's been angling for. He spent the next 2 days setting up the architecture of his revenge. He hired a discreet, high-end private investigator, a former NYPD detective named Leo, whom Ben recommended. Leo's task was simple. Follow Evelyn to Tokyo. Document every meeting, every dinner, and every single nighttime excursion with Marcus Thorne. David also used his IT expertise to subtly audit the shared cloud space, recovering deleted texts and calendar entries. He found the secret messages between E and M, not explicit, but full of intimate code words and clandestine plans. Can't wait for the penthouse view and counting the minutes until the quarterly review with you. Phrases that now read as damning evidence. Not romantic banter. Evelyn, oblivious, was in a whirlwind of professional excitement. She spent an hour on FaceTime with David from her hotel room in Tokyo, showing off the view of the skyline. She was effusive, overly affectionate, trying to quell any possible suspicion. "I miss you." "Honey," she cooed, her face tilted slightly away from the camera, hiding the part of the room where Marcus Thorne was likely waiting. "This trip is grueling, but it'll be worth it. Marcus is really counting on me." "I know, Eve," David said, forcing a genuine-sounding sigh. "Be safe. I'm proud of you." Each word was a lie, a structural support he was carefully removing before the collapse. Leo's daily reports were chillingly efficient. Dinner at a 2-Michelin-star restaurant, billed to a Tech Corp account. Late-night drinks at the hotel bar, followed by both of them disappearing into the presidential suite, Marcus's accommodation. The final report was a series of time-stamped, crystal-clear photos, Evelyn leaving the presidential suite at 7 a.m., adjusting her dress, and then Marcus following 2 minutes later, looking rumpled and satisfied. The receipts were all there, meticulously logged as executive strategy meetings. David printed the report, each page a nail in the coffin of her career. While Evelyn was gone, David subtly adjusted their condo situation. He moved all his personal high-value assets, investments, rare watches, his family heirlooms, into a newly created separate trust in Ben's name. He changed the locks on his study and his personal safe. He did this all without a single visible change, leaving the apartment looking exactly as she remembered it, a perfect, beautiful trap. Evelyn returned from Tokyo 3 days later, smelling faintly of expensive perfume, jet fuel, and guilt. She was ecstatic. "The best trip of my career, David. I closed the biggest deal of the quarter, and Marcus is naming me Senior VP of Global Sales. It's official Monday at the board meeting." Her eyes shone with ambition, a brilliance that eclipsed any false light of love she might have once held for him. "That's incredible, Eve," David said, pulling her into a careful, brief embrace. The words tasted like ash. "We have to celebrate. I'll make reservations at the signature room for tomorrow night." He chose the signature room at the Hancock Tower for its symbolism. It was where they had celebrated her very first promotion at Tech Corp, a place of high hopes and promises. It was also a place where she could see her empire from the heights, just before he brought it down. The next day, Saturday, Evelyn was too busy preparing her acceptance speech for Monday's board meeting to notice David's quiet efficiency. He spent the morning emailing a meticulously compiled dossier to Ben. The file contained the photos, the internal text messages, the expense reports marked executive strategy, the signed affidavit from Leo, and a detailed outline of how Marcus Thorne's actions constituted an abuse of corporate power, specifically a violation of the company's new, highly publicized ethics code. His final action was the most delicate. He changed the passcode on the shared Wi-Fi network, ensuring she couldn't immediately access the cloud or company servers from the condo, a small, almost invisible inconvenience, a single loose wire in her perfect world. That evening, as the sun set over Chicago and the city lights began to twinkle in a breathtaking tapestry of gold and white, David and Evelyn sat at a prime table overlooking the magnificent view. Evelyn was radiant in a new designer gown, sipping champagne and beaming. She spoke excitedly about her future, her plans to manage a larger team, her new salary, her power. She barely asked David a single question about his life. "It's all happening, David," she said, leaning across the table, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm going to be one of the youngest VPs in Tech Corp history. It's everything I've worked for." "I'm sure it is," David said, his eyes scanning the city below. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You've built quite the empire, Eve. You're very good at climbing." "I had help," she admitted, giving a knowing, conspiratorial smile that made David's stomach turn. "Marcus is a powerful ally, I know." "He's a powerful ally," David agreed, raising his glass. "To the youngest VP in Tech Corp history." She clinked his glass, her smile wide and unguarded. The moment was perfect. The glass tower was glittering, her hubris was at its peak. "I need to use the ladies' room, she said, excusing herself. David watched her walk away, noting the confident swing of her hips, the sense of untouchable power she projected. When she was out of sight, he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were 2 documents: the notarized divorce petition citing adultery and the evidence binder addressed to the Tech Corp Board of Directors Ethics Committee. He pulled out his phone and sent a final text to Ben. Execute the plan. Ben's response was instantaneous. Done. Filing now. Ethics Committee has the binder. Good luck, my friend. David placed the manila envelope on Evelyn's chair, the address label facing up. He stood up, placed a $50 bill on the table for the champagne they had barely touched, and walked toward the exit. He didn't look back. The view from the top was no longer his problem. He knew that when Evelyn returned, she wouldn't even notice he was gone at first. Her eyes would go straight to the manila envelope, and that was when her meticulously constructed world would begin its long, irreversible free fall. Evelyn returned from the restroom, the confident swagger of a soon-to-be senior VP still in her stride. She approached the table, her eyes scanning for David, but freezing instantly on the manila envelope resting on her chair. It was thick, heavy, and starkly out of place against the fine linen. Her smile vanished. She picked it up, her mind racing. It was addressed in David's neat, technical script, to Evelyn Sterling, personal and private. She tore it open, her fingers trembling with a sudden icy dread that had nothing to do with the winter air outside. The first page was the petition for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. And in bold, a secondary clause, adultery and emotional abandonment. The date stamp was today. She barely registered the shock of the legal paperwork. It was the next page that made the blood drain from her face. It was a photo, grainy but undeniable. Herself and Marcus Thorne, locked in a passionate kiss in the dim light of the Tech Corp parking garage. Beneath it, David had typed a single, chilling caption, Exhibit A, the Professional Alliance. The rest of the binder spilled out. The private investigator's report, complete with time-stamped photos of her entering and exiting Marcus's presidential suite in Tokyo, alongside copies of the Tech Corp expense reports detailing the executive strategy dinners. Every piece of code, every subtle lie, every illicit moment was cataloged with the brutal, scientific precision of an engineer. Exhibit B, Executive Strategy. Expense Report Audit. Note, misuse of corporate funds. Exhibit C, Recovered communications between E and M, violations of professional conduct policy. Her mind screamed, how? How did he know the Tokyo trip? How did he get the expense reports? She fumbled for her phone, needing Marcus, needing a lifeline, needing to undo this catastrophic mistake. The moment she tried to connect, she saw the simple error message. Wi-Fi password changed. A minor technicality, but in that moment, it felt like the entire world had been cut off. David's ghost was already locking her out of their digital world. She bolted from the restaurant, ignoring the astonished looks of the maitre d' and the clatter of her chair. She took a taxi straight to the condo, a frantic knot of panic tightening in her chest. When she burst through the front door, the condo was immaculate, but unnervingly empty. David's car was gone. His side of the closet was orderly but sparse, missing the essentials. He hadn't just left. He had vacated. She ran to her study to use the desktop computer. It was logged off. She ran to the secure wall safe where they kept their critical financial documents and the prenup. The dial spun freely. The box was empty. She sank to the floor, the cold tile a mirror of the cold terror now paralyzing her. The revenge, she realized, was already complete. She managed to call Marcus, her voice a desperate, trembling whisper. Marcus, you have to help me. David knows everything. He has proof, photos, expense reports. He filed for divorce. Marcus's voice on the other end was strained, distant. Evelyn, listen to me. I just got a call from the board. The ethics committee received an anonymous, highly detailed package. They're demanding an emergency meeting Monday morning. HR is already involved. They're talking about a gross breach of corporate ethics and potential fraud on the expense reports. Evelyn's breath hitched. No, it can't be. It is, Marcus said, his voice hardening with the sound of a man protecting his own skin. They have everything. I've been temporarily suspended, pending a full investigation. I told them we were just friends, that the Tokyo suite was shared for late-night meetings, but the paper trail is too clean. Whoever did this is a professional. You need to handle your husband, Evelyn. I can't be connected to this. Don't call me again until I clear my name. The phone went dead. Marcus, the powerful ally, had abandoned her. Monday arrived, not with the triumph of a senior VP promotion, but with a stark, brutal reality. Evelyn arrived at the TechCorp headquarters to find her keycard disabled. A somber HR representative and a security guard met her in the lobby. Her laptop was confiscated. She was escorted to a conference room, not for a board meeting, but for an interrogation. The evidence David had supplied was undeniable. Marcus, a man with his own long-term interests and a family reputation to protect, immediately threw Evelyn under the bus, claiming she was a disgruntled employee who had manufactured a fling to expedite her career and was now attempting to extort him. The moral turpitude clause was invoked. By lunchtime, Evelyn Sterling, the rising star, was summarily terminated for gross misconduct and fraudulent use of corporate funds. Her massive stock options, unvested due to the immediate termination, were gone. The final blow came 2 days later, delivered by Ben's firm. The prenup, which Evelyn had dismissed as an outdated formality, was ruthlessly enforced. David's separate secure accounts, which she hadn't known the true value of, were protected. Due to the finding of adultery, a favorable financial settlement was granted to David. She was left with the contents of the joint accounts, depleted over the months by her high-spending lifestyle, and a reputation in the high-tech sales community that was now toxic. A week after the divorce filing, Evelyn received a final, anonymous package at her new temporary apartment. Inside, there was only a small flash drive. She plugged it into her laptop. It contained a single audio file. It was David's voice, recorded in the silent study the morning after the party. Clear, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. I will show her what happens when a meticulous engineer is betrayed. She built her life on a lie. I will ensure the collapse is total. The sound of a key being turned in a lock followed. She finally understood. David hadn't reacted with anger or sadness. He had reacted with strategy. Her affair was a structural flaw, and he had simply calculated the exact perfect forces needed to initiate a controlled demolition. She hadn't been fighting a man. She had been fighting a cold, brilliant, and perfectly executed plan. Evelyn, once untouchable, sat alone in the quiet, small apartment, the digital echo of her husband's cold, triumphant voice the only sound. She had chased power and passion at the expense of her marriage, only to find that the quiet man she had underestimated had been the ultimate architect of her ruin. The game was over, and David Sterling had won the separation, the finances, and the final, devastating word. Her glittering, ambitious life had been reduced to a pile of rubble,